In today's episode, we're hanging out with someone who's deep in the world of youth fly fishing and giving back in a big way. From mentoring foster kids to helping lead one of the most dominant youth teams in fly fishing, this conversation is full of inspiration and tactical tips. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why a little slack in your nymph drift can be a game changer, and you're going to get a fresh take on Euro nymphing myths and techniques so you have more success this year. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Traveled Podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. Grew up around a little fly shop and created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts out there. Jess Westbrook, one of the key players behind Team USA's youth fly fishing domination in recent years, is here to break down what it takes to succeed on the water, especially when you're showing up somewhere brand new stream. You're going to find out how to research a lake, what to look for before you wet a line, and how the best anglers adjust when things are shifting. Plus, you're going to get his 3 factors for success in stillwater competitions, why lakes are considered the great equalizer, and what kind of leader setup and tactics can give you the edge. This episode of Traveled is presented by Yellowstone Teton Territory, where you can explore great fishing, hunting, and world championships this year. All right, let's get into it. Here he is, Jess Westbrook from the Mayflyproject.org. How you doing, Jess?
Hey, I'm doing great, Dave. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, this is going to be good to catch up with you. I don't have it in front of me. I'll get a link out there in the show notes to the episode we did the first time we heard about the Mayfly Project, this amazing program that you created for, we'll talk more about that for youth and how that's going. I'm sure it's going great. And then also Team USA, you're part of the youth Team USA, and I didn't realize that at the time. And so it's going to be cool to catch up. We just had Josh Miller on, which was amazing, and I think we've got Drew Bone is going to be our first actual youth. Yeah, he's going to be our first youth member who's going to be on the pod, unless he has a guide trip. He said if he has a guide trip this week, he'll have to cancel. But I'm like, hey, I'm good with that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, what's been going on with you since the last? It's probably been a couple years since we chatted last. What's been new with you in the Mayfly?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Dave, like Mayfly Project's amazing. We just continue to grow. We've got a few new employees that have kind of come on in the last 12 months or so, and Emily and Joanna, and they've been amazing, right? Like we've got a lot more help. Man, I mean, honestly, just trying to get a whole bunch of foster kids out and create those awesome river experiences and connect them with nature, So it's just super busy, and we're blowing and going.
You're going for it. What is, for maybe people that didn't hear the first episode, maybe just describe what it is, what you guys do with the Mayfly Project. And I'm looking at it now. It was, it was about 4 years ago since you've been on, I think episode 194. Cool. So yeah, give us a little summary of what you guys do there.
Yeah. So at the Mayfly Project, we mentor foster children through fly fishing. So we'll basically take those foster children out on 5 outings, and we'll teach them everything from casting to, we have a conservation piece. They'll earn buttons, much like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. And then we'll take them on a final outing, their very last outing, and we'll outfit them with everything to fly fish on their own. So we'll give them their own fly rod, their own pack, their own flies. So basically, we're, I find a lot of healing through fly fishing. And so we're hoping to provide these kids with all of the knowledge and the gear to do that on their own and get out and, hopefully connect with nature and use that as a healing tool for all the trauma and, anxiety and stuff that comes from being in foster care.
Where did this original idea, I can't remember when our last chat, how did this come to you? Because you're kind of the person behind this whole idea, right? Did it just come to your head, or how'd that happen?
Yeah, so, it all started about 10 years ago. My first son, Case, was born. And when Case was born, I started experiencing like crazy anxiety. It was something that I'd never really experienced in the past, or maybe I had traces of it, but not anything like this. And I had a friend who was a local fly fishing guide that I really looked up to. He's probably 10 years older than me. And he, kept getting me out on the river. So I've fly fished my entire life. Like I've guided in Alaska, I've done all the things. But once that anxiety hit, I kind of stopped for just a little bit. And then Chris kind of really, was like, hey, go fishing. And I kind of noticed every time I got on the river that, all my anxious thoughts, my stress, like all seemed to disappear while I was out on the river. And I was looking for a way to give back. And we were at church one Sunday, and there was an organization there by the name of The Call. which is an Arkansas organization, and they were talking about foster children. And at that time, I was a new dad, and I was like, man, I can't imagine, a parent, you know, or those kids being in that situation, I guess. And I was like, man, I looked at Laura, my wife, and I was like, that's what I want to do is I want to start mentoring foster kids. So that was we got our 501c3 in 2015. So this is our 10th year.
Oh, wow.
Um, and it's been an awesome 10 years. Right now we have probably 62 to 64 projects in like 32 states and the United Kingdom. So
Wow.
we've grown a whole lot. We really focus on one-to-one mentor to mentee ratio, right? Like getting these kids out and just I kind of tell people all the time, like, this is all about fly fishing, but it has nothing to do with fly fishing, if that makes sense, right? Like, just getting those kids out and getting them on the river does great things for all of us.
Yeah, when I hear that, I always think of The River Runs Through It, Norman McLean, how he said, the book. I think Jack Dennis, when we talked to him, Jack was telling us the story of when he was chatting with Norman, or that whole story.
Uh-huh.
And he said, he was asking Jack about The River Runs Through It. Like, did you read the book? This is way back in the day when it first came
Uh-huh.
out. And Jack was like, yeah, I read it, and it was a great fly fishing book. And he's like, no, you don't get it. Nobody gets it. It's not a book about fly fishing. It's not a movie about fly fishing, right? It's about the brothers, the family.
Right.
And it feels like
Mm-hmm.
that. I hear that when you say that, it's the same thing. This is not about fly fishing. It's about the kids and the outdoors
That's
and
right.
health, right?
100%.
Yeah, cool. Well, what was the connection to? I didn't realize on the youth. I mean, obviously, it's an easy connection now when you think about it. Kind of, you're still working with youth, and I'm sure there's crossover stuff there. But how did that? Have you been connected to Team USA for a while?
So really, I did a few like competitions and stuff when, probably like 10 or 12 years ago. So I was fishing in some of the Team USA regionals and stuff like that, and trying to get better, right? And so even though I was a fishing guide myself, I would go over and I would hire like Josh Miller. So I flew up to Pennsylvania and fished with Josh a couple times, because I think that he's,
Yeah.
for sure, like, one of the best river anglers in the U.S. And so I flew up there and fished with Josh for a couple times, like couple days each time, and then went over and another Team USA coach, his name is Gordon Vanderpool. So I flew over to North Carolina and spent like a week with Gordon, just trying to like hone in all of these skills. And Josh and Gordon are friends, and we kind of started becoming friends. And I was like, hey, we should do some Euro nymphing clinics, and they were like, all right. So basically, we started hosting these clinics around the U.S. So we've done them in Connecticut, we've done it in Colorado, we've done it in Oklahoma. So we've kind of hit those places and started doing these Euro nymphing clinics. And then last year, probably in you know probably March or so, Josh called me and he was like, "Hey, man, we need a manager for the youth team. That would be it'd be amazing if you came over and helped." And so I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." So I'm really good at kind of like organization and the business side of things, and um, so that's kind of how I ended up with Team USA. They needed somebody to help take the kids to the Czech Republic, and
Yeah.
Josh asked me to join on, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Of course, I had to convince my wife that I was going to be gone for
Yeah.
2 weeks to the Czech Republic. But that was the hardest part of my decision.
Yeah, that is the hardest part. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always the travel, right? Is a lot of fun, but you're away from family, so it's challenging.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're out there, so you're helping with the Team US, and the cool thing is that it seems like you've joined, or you're part of what's become this epic team, right? I think you guys have won two world championships. Is that true?
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so they won in 2023 in Bosnia. They won a gold medal, a team gold medal, and I think
Yeah.
Drew Bone, right, won an individual gold. And then last year in the Czech Republic, the kids won the team gold, and then they swept the individual medals. So they won, gold, silver, and bronze individually too. And yeah, so it's this coming up World Championships is going to be held in Idaho Falls, Idaho. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, we hope, hope the boys can get after it this one
Yeah,
too.
I mean, you think it's like the perfect setup because they've got two world championships. I'm not even sure. I don't think that's ever been done, right, with Team USA in any at any level. I don't think.
I'm not sure. I think like so before Josh was coach, there was a guy probably like 10 years ago. His name was Paul Bork. And he was the coach for a little bit. And I think they may have
Oh
won
wow.
three, but I'm not sure if they
Yeah.
were back to back, you know? Um, but yeah, this will definitely be a great accomplishment, especially for Josh as like the head coach, you know? So um, I'm super proud of him. He does a great job with the kids and he really relates to him. And like I said, he's an amazing coach. So Josh has definitely done a
Yeah.
great
No, this is
job.
exciting because I think, and we've been doing some connecting and had a few episodes, and I think the fact that it's in Idaho Falls and on the famous rivers, right, the Henry's Fork, and it's going to be pretty
Right,
awesome to see. And the cool
right.
thing about the way it works here is that I've learned this just on some of the episodes is that they don't close down the rivers here, so the South Fork, the Snake, will not be closed down. There's going to be other anglers out there just fishing regularly while they're doing the tournament. Do you know about how, or do you guys already have that set up? Are you already thinking about how this is all going to go down? Because I think it's in, is it July this year? When is it?
Yes, yes. So it'll be. I think the actual competition is like the 13th through the 18th. I think it's that week. You know what I mean? So there's some. I think opening ceremonies are the 12th, and the closing ceremonies are the 19th, I believe. But yeah. So there will be other anglers out there. We just kind of try to do our best and be respectful, and not step on anybody's toes. And the river's obviously for everybody.
I mean, I think Josh, when I had him on the podcast, I kind of, when they do these shows, it's pretty cool because right away you realize when you're interviewing for somebody for the first time, you're like, wow, I want to talk to this guy more because he's so knowledgeable. What is it about
Oh
Josh?
yeah.
Why do you think he's such a good river angler? Can you pick something out, or is it just, what sticks out to you?
So yeah, I think I don't know if Josh will agree with this, right? But I think so Josh has a lot of experience, right? Like he was on Team USA, the men's team for 2 cycles. He was, he was the manager of the youth team for probably like 10 years before he became the head coach. So Josh has fished a lot of different places, right? Like and so I think that makes him a super versatile angler. Like he's seen a lot of things. He's fished in a ton of countries. I can't even tell you how many it is. And he actually has a list on his phones of like all the places he's fished. So I think just fishing all those different places, fishing with all those different people makes you a well-rounded angler, right? And then also, growing up and fishing the rivers of PA. Yeah, I mean, obviously that has an element to it as well. But I think his just experience around the world. He's seen a lot of things and been in a lot of situations, and so sometimes those situations will replicate themselves. So I think that really helps him dissect the river and understand what's happening faster than most people.
What is the on the nonprofit? I'm kind of interested about how that worked. It's been 10 years, but was that process creating a nonprofit 501c3? What was that like? Do you remember it well, getting started and all that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, I remember it well for sure. No, it was. I have a business background, so I'm an accountant. So the business side of things was pretty easy. Kind of I think the hardest thing is controlling the growth, right? So like, as you're trying to bring a nonprofit up, you want to have a great program and you want it to be beneficial and everybody wants to do it, right? But like you can't really do that. So you kind of gotta, we slowed our growth a little bit to make sure that we were creating sustainable projects around the US. So I think that's been the hardest part is just like building something from scratch. The business side of it is totally fine, but there's also a human side of like, you know, um, I feel like the most important people in the Mayfly project are 1,000,000% are volunteers, right? Like, there's no doubt about it. And so, making sure those volunteers are happy and that we do a great job in supporting them is one of our obviously serving foster kids is number one, but making sure our mentors and volunteers are happy are number two. So I think controlling the growth of it and also making sure that we are able to support our mentors. Those have been the hardest parts of it, I guess.
Makes sense. Okay, and if people are listening now and they want to volunteer or get connected, what's the best way to find out if they have something going on in their area?
Yeah, so we have an interactive map on our website that you can kind of go in and see if there's a project near you. And if there is, you can just go to our application that's on our website, and there's a drop down menu that'll list all the projects, and you can just select the project that's closest to you, and kind of submit an application. And if you want to start a new project, if there's one that's not close to you, there's another application for project startups that asks just a few different questions, and we kind of know how to process those. So yeah, just visit our website, and all the information on kind of getting involved is on there.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. So that's it. So you get started. What are some of the things that a volunteer is this part where you talked about the one-on-one is how what would potential volunteers be doing?
Yeah, so I probably should clarify that, Dave, actually. So the one-on-one, we're still doing it. We're still working in groups, right? So like we'll have let's just say the Little Rock, Arkansas project, still they're all going out as a group, but you have a kid one-on-one. So yeah, I mean, the good thing is we have a lot of volunteers. We will, if we do have more volunteers than kids, like we'll just there'll be two mentors for volunteers, which is actually a great thing, right? Like these kids a lot of them are in group homes, so they're in a house with however many other kids, and so it's great for them just to kind of get that one-on-one connection, right? Like even though it's all about fishing and all that stuff, like um, it means a lot to them, that they kind of get that just one-on-one time, and there's no agenda with it, right? Like even if these kids are going to see therapists or they're going to talk to their caseworkers, there's always a motive behind it, right? Like, okay, we're deciding this or we're figuring out this. Like with us, like it's just 2 to 4 hours of cutting up and fishing and eating snacks and all that good stuff. So as a mentor, you kind of get to be a part of that, and we definitely we're kind of like if we know these fish are let's just say eating midges, right, or whatever, like, and your kid wants to tie on a super hot pink woolly bugger, like let's just go for it. It's all about just kind of meeting the kids where they're at, and a good mentor isn't necessarily you know your local fly fishing guide, right? It's somebody who can kind of tie a knot and connect with the kid. Those make our best mentors.
From what you learned with the Mayfly project, has it helped with what you do with Team USA, the youth there? Is there any overlap?
Yeah, I think kids are kids, right? Like granted, just kind of like I said, meeting them where they're at. These kids are in a little bit different situation, but I still think it's the same thing, right? Like we're still learning life lessons, with Team USA, just as we are with Mayfly Project. So it doesn't matter where the kid came from per se. We still have these life lessons that we need to learn. So I think kind of connecting with these kids on a different level is super fun too. So if that makes
Yeah, it
sense.
does. What is as you look out at this year, you mentioned the July 12th. Do you already kind of have things planned out? How do you see that rolling out this year? Do you have it in your mind exactly how this is all going to go?
Um, I guess the answer is yes. So I already have, we already have Google Docs of, where we're going to stay, what we're going to do. We're going to start getting together a plan of, what we're going to fish and practice. So we're actually going to go out in June and practice, and kind of get stuff ready, and then we'll actually arrive a week early before the competition, and we'll practice then too in water that is designated for practice. So kind of getting all that set up. We'll start having meetings with we've already started with the kids having Zoom meetings with great anglers like Devin Olson and Lauren Williams, and just a bunch of people like that, Glade Gunther, focusing on the lake portion of it, right? So we feel like they call it the great equalizer in competitions, right? Like fishing the lake. So we've been trying to get our kids kind of geared up for that. So we'll just continue to work through those Zoom meetings. And like I said, we'll have practice in June, and then a month later we'll fly back out to fish in the competition. But yeah, it's pretty organized. We try to get everything really in line, so there's no questions, and everybody kind of knows the drill. The good thing is we have a team that's a little bit older, um, so those guys, are going to do a great job of preparing, and we're only going to have to add. We'll add one more team member from last year. We had Cage Kostler, who was the world champion last year. He aged out, and so we'll have one more kid that we're adding to the team. We actually know who it is, and we're getting ready to announce it. But we're super excited to add that kid and kind of get them plugged in and get everybody going.
How do you find how does that happen? Like the new youth, the new kids that are coming up from do they just come from word of mouth, or how does that work?
Yeah, a lot of it's like word of mouth and kind of social media. Um, we hold clinics, so we'll hold them in PA. Sometimes we'll hold them out west, North Carolina. We're going to try to do one in Oklahoma possibly this year, but we'll hold clinics where we basically we'll teach kids about different facets. A lot of tight line nymphing. We'll do some dry dropper and some dry fly stuff, but just try to get those kids introduced to the competition side and kind of get them going. And we recently just held nationals. A few weeks ago, and so the kids kind of get to go and compete against other kids. We had 24 kids compete at nationals, which was we had 24 kids compete at nationals, which was the most we've ever had. So we're trying to kind of build that pipeline. So our goal, kind of moving forward with the youth team, is to kind of get these clinics going all around the country and really build that pipeline of kids.
Yeah, makes sense. What is it that about now? I'm just thinking of the other countries, because there's what are they doing differently? Why do you think that there's been a lot of success here in the last couple of years and with Team USA compared to say other countries out there, or are they having similar success?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question.
Because it seems like I remember when I can't remember who was on here. I had somebody that was talking about just the regular men's championship. It was, I think it might have been actually Jack Dennis again. The history of how you had these guys over there. He was painting the picture of those people in the Czech Republic. I mean, it was if they didn't win, I think they were losing their jobs and stuff. Like, it was really important. You know what I mean? It was really seriously important, and that's why they were so good.
Yeah.
But it seems like maybe things have changed since those days back in the day.
Yeah, maybe. When we were, so this past summer when we were in the Czech, and the kids swept everything, like, they were not super happy.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. They were not super happy. Like, they were nice, but you could tell it was not kosher. I think that was the first time they had lost on home soil, like, ever. So, I think a lot of it, honestly, Dave, like, comes down to the coaches, right? And just the culture they build around it. So, I think Josh has done a great job of, I'll say, like, being open-minded and fluid on the river, right? Like, if things change on the river, you may go in there with your plan is to do this and do this because that's what's happening, and then all of a sudden you see fish higher up in the water column, and you got to be versatile, right? And so we really stress with our kids, like, let's keep our eyes open, let's make changes. We change up our drifts, we do all kinds of different things to make sure that we can maybe predict those fish's next step. You know what I mean? Like, if you got two nymphs on and they're constantly eating that top nymph, okay, like, those fish are looking up in the water column, right? And, like, I feel like Josh does a great job always pushing the envelope, to go lighter and thinner and more stealthy, right? Like, a lot of times people think of tightline or Euro nymphing and, you're fishing a 4 mil bead and dragging the bottom, which is definitely not what we're doing, So there's kind of some misconceptions when it comes to that. But I think a lot of it comes down to the coaches and, the tools they give the kids. And I think, the clinics and stuff that we do around here, I think really help, like I said, and we have great coaches. You got Gordon Vanderpool in North Carolina, Joe Clark in Pennsylvania, and Brian Kimball in Montana. And then you got Josh in PA as well. So I think could be the system a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So, and I love the, not dragging the bottom. So there's different, it's not just, get down deep quick
Oh
and
yeah,
get to the fish.
definitely not.
What are are there other kind of common Euro nymphing kind of myths you've seen or, see people doing, thinking about, talking about out there that aren't really true?
Yeah, I mean, there's the constant like, it's just high sticking, which can drive me a little insane. I mean, you'd be surprised at how far we can nymph away from us, with super light leaders. 10 years ago it was all about Maxima Chameleon and 25-pound butt sections, and then it's definitely not like that these days. So we I think the high sticking portion really gets me. I'm like, oh man, like
The high sticking being that you have to be right in close high sticking, or describe
right.
that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the deal. Like with an indicator, I've got a couple different things I can do, right? To like, um, but with tightline nymphing, I can do all kinds of different things. I can present that fly downstream. I can just do all of these different things. I think to make those fish kind of eat or figure out how they would like to eat that day, if that makes sense.
Right, and that's why one of the big benefits over the indicator.
And the indicator has its time and place, like for sure. A lot of times we'll just fish dry dropper because we can kind of do some versatile stuff with that, as far as like, there's sometimes we'll even hold the dry off the water, right? And like that also can act as an indicator. Like we can do different things. So, but the indicator definitely has its time and its place.
Yeah, and so the dry dropper, that's still a method that you can use with competition.
Yeah. So, and I think that's another key thing too. In the Czech Republic, like the kids caught them, regular tightline nymphing or Euro nymphing. They caught them streamer fishing. They caught them on dry flies. Like you got to be versatile at all of these things. So a lot of times people are just like, oh man, like those fishing competitions is just Euro nymphing. I'm like, no, it's definitely not. You got to be able to you got to be good at all of it, right? Including lakes, which is
right, lakes, which is a big. So you said that earlier. It's the great equalizer. That's kind of what you call it. Is that what people think of with lakes? And why is that? Just because their people aren't as experienced with them?
Nah, well, I think like there's not. So in the other in the river competitions, you draw a beat, right? So you have a beat, and you can fish between here and here. And so on the lakes, you're just in a boat, and you've got to kind of figure them out. There's no beat typically, unless you're fishing from the bank, right? Sometimes they'll do what they call pegs, and you can fish from the bank, but yeah, you're in a boat, and it's you're not limited. At least in the river sessions, you get assigned a beat, and sometimes you can draw a bad beat, which you can't really help. So I think that's the part that they consider the great equalizers, because you're not limited to anything. Everybody's got their own shot at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think that's the cool thing about the lakes is that the comps are, you're on the boat fishing with kind of your competitor, right? You
Right,
guys, one
that's
one
right.
guy has one side, the other guy has the other side, but at the same time, you're kind of fishing together, right? Because you still want to have the best day. Have you been out? Do you know have you been on the boat on that stuff? Have you seen how that works with the comps?
Yeah, so I've fished in a few competitions with boats in them. Oddly enough, Josh and I shared a boat
Oh, wow.
in a regional one time. Yeah, which was super fun.
Really, it was like you against Josh Miller.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like that was before I'd actually set up to hire Josh the Monday and Tuesday after that competition.
Oh,
Right,
no
so
kidding.
I got my teeth kicked in the competition, and I knew I was like, I'm gonna have to hire somebody. So, but anyway, so yeah, Josh and I shared a boat in my first lake comp. It was super funny. Like, I didn't actually know that we both fished at the same time, and so like I showed up to the lake thinking that Josh was fishing first, and Josh was like, "Where's all your stuff?" And I was like, "Well, it's in the car." He's like, "Well, you're fishing too." I was like, "Oh gosh, I didn't even know." Super funny. But yeah, so I've fished in a few of them. But yeah, I think from a competitive side, like, people do stuff like dye their fly lines and stuff so they can't tell what they're using, but I think for the most part, especially in the youth, the kids will try to work together, right? Because like you said, like you've got to work together. You're both on a boat, So I think there are times where maybe there are some differences, um, and even though they may not speak the same language, right? Because sometimes that happens. They try to work together.
What is, are you familiar with Idaho Falls, Henry's Lake, kind of that whole area? Have you been there before?
Not really. I have not been there before. I've been doing some research on it. And like I said, we've done some podcasts with, like Devin and Lauren Williams and some people like that. But I've never personally been there.
You mean you've been on other podcast shows?
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you were asking if I've been to Idaho Falls.
Oh yeah, well I was originally, and
Yeah.
then I was wondering about, you mentioned the podcast.
I've been kind of gathering it, but I've never personally set eyes on it.
Yeah, and that's where you guys are doing. You're getting meetings with like Devin Olson, other people that know, yeah,
That's
that are
right.
the best out there. And
That's right. That have fished the venues before and trying to kind of get intel on some of that stuff. Are these lakes, stock trout? Are they wild trout? Just trying to gather all of that stuff so we can kind of get a game plan in our head of how we're going to attack that.
and you guys are doing, I think it's Sheridan is one lake, right? You're
Yep,
doing. Are
Sheridan.
you also doing another lake?
Yeah, I think it's Higdon. I
Oh,
think.
Higdon.
Yeah, is the other lake that they're doing.
Higdon, and then I think you're also doing something on the Henry's Fork, and then
Yep.
also I think some trips to the South Fork of the Snake, right?
Yep, that's correct. That's correct.
So this is cool. So people, and if people want to get involved or come check it out, is it pretty much you can just roll down there, and you don't know much about that? Like if somebody wanted to check it out, do they just stop down in those dates and kind of watch what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. So, there's kind of some etiquette with that, right, Dave? Like, you don't want to be like down on the beat and stuff like that. I'm not sure like where the beats will be, if there'll be enough room for like spectators to be there.
In or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be down there in those areas. And like I said, yeah, if you see somebody fishing, you can definitely watch them. I would say just from a, respect point of view, don't, of course, don't,
Give them some room.
yeah, get out in the water, do anything like that. But yeah, like, I think that stuff's always good. And I always love going. I always learn stuff from the kids and watching other kids. And I mean, it's a great time and it's a great way to learn more. So these kids are some great anglers for sure.
Yeah, I think that seems like one of the coolest parts of it is that you get to watch some of the best, and and it's not only the kids, right? The women are actually going
Yep,
at the
that's
same
right.
time, which is
Yep,
which is
that's
kind
right.
of cool. And we've done right, and that's now that's separate but connected, or how does that look?
Yeah, it's separate but connected. We'll all be staying, I think, at the same hotel and doing all, and we're fishing some of the same venues. I think that there may be some sections or whatever that they fish that we don't fish, but yeah, it'll be going on during the same time, and it's going to be pretty cool. And so we're really excited when we fly out to do our practice. The women will be out there practicing too, so we're going to try to share and kind of share information, and the way we can all hopefully do good as a country.
What is the you mentioned learning from the kids? Are there some things you've learned just by working with them over the years on straight up fly fishing tips and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I'm not sure I can think of anything off the top of my head today, but like I'll see, somebody approach a piece of water, and I'll be like, huh, I wouldn't have thought to do it like that, or whatever. It's so yeah, there's always stuff to learn. I mean, some of these kids, have fished, in men's competitions and done well this year, right? On some of these same venues. I think that, we had Lawson fly out and fish. He fished a comp that was held up in here, and he did really good in the comp. So, these kids are definitely some sticks. So there's always stuff to pick up for sure.
So I mean, now with the Mayfly project, the youth. I mean, it seems like you're probably fairly busy. What else do you have going on, or is this the bulk of what you have going on in the fly fishing space?
Yeah, so this is kind of it. You know what I mean? And these are two things that I love, right? Like, Mayfly Project obviously has has a super special place in my heart. You know what I mean? Like it's my favorite. And like I said, since I've come on with the youth team, like this has been super fun too. So I was guiding and doing some things, and I've kind of given up the guiding piece now. Just to kind of not take more time away from my family. And yeah, man, I mean, I'm just getting to do some really cool, fun stuff. So traveling with the youth team and traveling with Mayfly Project, like it's really fun. And I think the cool part is like they don't overlap. You know what I mean? Kind of. One of the things that we've talked about when I came on with the youth team, it was like, okay, well, we have Mayfly Project and I have the youth team, and those things have to be separate. You know what I mean? So I don't mix and match donors or anything like that. You know what I
Oh,
mean? You
yeah,
got to
yeah, right.
keep everything super separate. So the managing piece of Team USA, I just kind of do whatever Josh and them tell me to do. You know what I
Right,
mean? Which
right.
is
Yeah.
fun. Mayfly Project is kind of like it's more thinking out loud and trying to lead it, and then the youth team I kind of just get to. I'm still working, but I'm getting to take direction and do that stuff from somebody
Sure.
else. So that if that kind of makes sense,
Yeah, it does.
it's super nice to be able to kind of do that. And like I said, I love Josh Miller to death,
Yeah.
and love all those guys. So it's been super fun.
And what are as far as the youth, the kids on the team, how many are going to be competing, and how many total are on the team?
Yeah, so we have 12 that are on the team right now, and we'll have 6 that'll be competing at Worlds. So there'll be 5 anglers that compete, and we'll have one alternate, but that alternate can kind of come in and out, if that makes sense. So, which typically that'll happen. If somebody's a strong river angler, but a weaker lake angler, you can kind of interchange the alternate and the fishermen listed on the roster. So yeah, so it's super cool, and like I said, we're excited to get that going.
That's sweet. And Drew Bone is one of the kids on there. Is he an older kid, or what's
Yeah,
his?
so I think Drew's last year was 2023, and I think he was the world champion that year. Don't quote me on that. You know what I mean?
I'll
But
check in with him. Yeah.
yeah, but Drew's he's a great angler, and like I said, he was there before I was there. But yeah, he was. I think he was with them in Bosnia, I believe. And
Yeah.
like I said, yeah, he's a great stick, and like I said, he was with the organization I think for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I always think, kind of the sports analogies. I think it's interesting because you have these kids, right? There's 13, 14, 15, and they're at high levels, right? They're competing.
Yeah,
And it seems like, wow, that would be a challenge. I think of myself at that level. I remember, lots of failures, right, when you're that
yeah.
age. But then you go to the young phenoms in other sports, right? The Tiger Woods, LeBron James, all these
Mhm.
kids. And it seems like, I mean, what separates that? Think of like you're on the stage, because I'm sure there's lots of pressure. Do you see that? What do you tell the kids? Do you think there is a lot of pressure for these kids out there competing, or is it different because there's not the money piece? I mean, that's one thing, right? You don't see, right? They're not
There's
winning
not the
millions
money
of
piece of it.
dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could see that. I do think there's a lot of pressure, especially when it comes, on like when they're fishing the national championship or when they're fishing the world championships. I think Josh and I are both pretty relaxed, so I think sometimes that can kind of project on them. Like if you have a bad session, you just do. Like I was talking to one of the kids who didn't start out nationals the way that he would have liked to. And I was like, hey, like you're a great fisherman, like you're going to do great tomorrow. And so I think, a lot of those affirmations and stuff, like even Jess as like an angler, right? Like I'll have days where I'm like, man, I'm terrible at this,
right. We all
like
do that. Yeah.
golly, like
What am I doing guiding somebody out here? Right. I'm
yeah,
terrible. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's a lot of that emotional support too, right? Like you guys got this, and so I think there's a lot of pressure, but I also think I think a lot of these kids handle it pretty well too. They've done it for a while. It's funny. I'll be anxious if we get together and talk again. The next World Championships in 2026, I believe, is in Ireland,
Oh,
which is
wow.
like mostly lakes, and we'll have like
Oh, nice.
all new team. You know what I mean? So it's not an all new team, but a lot of the kids are aging out this year, so it's gonna be interesting in 2026. So I may have a different answer about the kids being nervous and all that good stuff, but I think they handle it. They handle it really good. I think they actually probably handle it better than I would, honestly.
No, I think, yeah, like anything, it's just the pressure is part of, sports. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
really, I guess we don't consider fly fishing really a sport, but, it is, at that level, I think it is probably, right, if you're
Oh,
competing.
100%. It's physical, and think about it. Some of the beats last year, I'll never forget. I was watching Lawson um, fish one of these beats that had these huge boulders in it, and like he was like falling down, and I mean, just it. Like I was like, man,
Yeah, he was going for it. He was just like,
yeah, yeah, going
yeah.
for it. And like I said, he like slid down a rock to, this fish took him down the next waterfall, and he like slid down. And I was like, man, I'm almost 40. I'd be so sore after that. Like,
Oh, right. Yeah,
he's
totally.
he's 17 years old, so
Oh, yeah, he's
he,
loving it.
he can just get after it.
Nice. And then on, back to the Mayfly project, I think talked to you about this before, but now it's been another 4 years. I mean, you must be seeing some of these kids growing up now and becoming adults. Are you tracking some of that as these kids go through your program?
That's a super great question, Dave, and one we get all the time. So a lot of times the foster care system will, just kind of take those kids, and we don't necessarily know where they end up.
Oh, sure.
And you never kind of know. And also I think for the Mayfly project, we talk about we have those 5 outings for setting, expectations and boundaries, right? For both the kids and the mentors, like those kids have been let down their entire life. So, telling them that we're only going to be there 5 times, and then it kind of stops. There's a start and a stop. And I think that's good for everybody. But I will say this, right? Like we have kids who are coming back and starting to mentor, which is super
There
awesome.
you
So
go.
a lot of the kids, kind of like, they move on, and we don't hear from them. But there are times, right, where these kids are coming back, and we have kids that come back year after year. We have some kids in my project that have been coming, for 3 or 4 years, So like, I mean, I know these kids, so it's super cool. But like I said, we're not able to really track them, and we kind of feel like that's a blessing and a curse, right? Like you can't ever answer that question, and there's no really statistics.
But it's it works. I mean, just from experience on other events, I mean, go to
Yeah.
Project Healing Waters, it's totally different, I'm sure, but that stuff works because you hear the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
stories.
I mean, I've got tons of stories about like, going through Chick-fil-A and seeing a girl that we used to mentor, and she's like, "Hey, I taught my adoptive family how to fish, and we go
Oh,
every
wow.
weekend." You know what I mean? Like
Nice.
we've had mentors in Colorado, see past mentees on rivers, like, I mean, it
Amazing.
definitely works. It's just kind of for the kids' safety and for our mentors' safety that we don't continue to track them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. And you mentioned 32 states. Are you trying to have a goal to get to all 50 states, or is this something where you're not really putting that pressure on yourself?
Yeah, I think that is a goal, right? But we're definitely not putting pressure on ourselves, to do that. Like if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. I always said from the beginning, like, if this thing, you know, if Mayfly Project ended up, and I really thought about this in COVID, right? If Mayfly Project ended up and it just wasn't a thing, like I would still be mentoring foster kids, right? Like for sure. So, it just kind of goes where it goes, and we're not really gonna make it fit into different boxes, I guess. You know what I mean? But yeah, we would love to be in 50 states, but um, if we do get one from Hawaii, we may bump that to the top of the list. But
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but no, I think we do want to be there, but we're not actively trying to pursue those, if that makes sense.
Okay. And is that how it works? Like when you have if there's a state out there that doesn't have a project, does that just come from somebody coming to you, or do you go out
Yes.
and, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, it does.
100%. Like all of these lead mentors come to us.
They come to you and they say, "Hey, I'm in Nebraska and I want to help. I want to get involved."
That's right.
Yeah, because obviously I'm sure there's concerns, right, around this country. Is that, if you guys looked at that, are there places that, pretty much it's an issue everywhere, or are there more places where maybe there's more need?
Yeah, I think It's 100% everywhere. I do think there are places with more need than others. Like obviously, bigger cities, bigger
Yeah, the
places
bigger
with
cities.
population. There's a bigger need. Um, but yeah, it just for us like finding the right lead mentor is really, really important. Like we only start 5 new projects a year. So, in 2025, we're starting Erie, Pennsylvania, Brighton, Massachusetts, Dallas, Texas, Anchorage, Alaska, and Paragould, Arkansas. So those are our
In
5
Arkansas.
projects. And so we just try to make sure that, we normally start working with them like a year out to make sure they understand the process and what's going to happen. And so, kind of like I said earlier, making sure those projects are sustainable is the most important thing. We want those projects to flourish. And I think some of the best stories I have are like, hey, I did a news interview today and did all this stuff. Like, I love that so much. It's my favorite. To see those mentors getting that recognition because they deserve it. A lot of times myself and Caitlin and other Mayfly Project employees get to do some of these cool things like these podcasts. You know what I mean? And so, and truly, like, I wish all of our mentors got to do this kind of stuff. And when they get to do it, man, I love it so much. It's my favorite.
Definitely. Well, that's a good idea maybe for the future is to find maybe one of your mentors that wants to come on the show and
Oh, that'd be awesome.
and
That'd be
hear
awesome.
hear more from a different perspective, right? Of
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
who, yeah,
We have some great human beings, Dave. Like I said, I'd love if you want to do a project with like a lead mentor or a regular mentor. Like we have some super cool stories of like former foster kids, or we have lead mentors that are therapists. And
yeah,
we have some really really cool and awesome people
yep.
involved with the Mayfly project.
Do you guys connect with like on the media, say the news, TVs, all that stuff? Do you make an effort to say, hey, there's getting the word out, or does that just come kind of naturally, organically?
Yeah, it kind of comes naturally. Every once in a while, if we have a lead mentor who's starting a new project that is trying to find kids, we'll be like, hey, reach out to local news outlets, and those lead mentors kind of do all of that legwork. We'll step in and help if we can. But for the most part, we have those lead mentors are kind of making all those connections and making that stuff happen.
Yeah, they're doing it all. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
man. Well, this has been cool to kind of get an update on both projects. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
Mayfly project, and I think of the youth. It's not a project because you guys have, 2 world championships. So you're, I won't say, well, I guess I won't say dominating, but if you get 3 in a row, I don't know what you call that, right? The three-peat. That seems like you're at
Yeah.
the.
You
But I
just
don't want
better
to
knock
jinx
on
you.
some wood
I don't
over
want to
there,
jinx
Dave.
you
Knock
guys.
on some wood.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No.
I'm knocking on wood.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll put all that pressure on Josh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Josh. And is it, because we've talked to Josh and Glade, we talked to
Yeah.
Glade about, and he's kind of helping to, I think, manage. Well, he's at a different level, right, with what Glade does.
Yeah.
But who else? Is there anybody else in the youth team that's kind of at your guys' level, or is it just you and Josh kind of running things
Yeah.
there?
So we have John Ford, who is the president of the youth team. So he kind of handles all the fundraising piece, all the money piece, and that kind of stuff. And so he's been with the youth team for a long, long time. So like I said, and then of course Josh is the head coach, and then me as the manager position, I handle like the planning parts of things. I'll do a little bit of coaching, if I need to. I'm a big moral support. And then yeah, like our coaches Gordon Vanderpool, Joe Clark, and Brian Kimmel are awesome. And then we have a ton of instructors that have kind of like, and this is really a Josh thing, right? Like building that pipeline has been really important for Josh. We used to do a lot of like weekend clinics, right? So you would like come in for the weekend, and then it'd be like $1,000 or $500 or something like that. And you'd spend the whole weekend, and we'd have coaches there and instructors there and that kind of stuff. But it was pretty expensive, and so kind of the way that Josh is moving the team is for to do like 1 day clinics, and they're like $125 a piece, right? And we've had like Mike Kamara, who's on the men's team and done really well. We've had George Daniel. We've had all these people kind of working with these kids, right, who are amazing fishermen.
So these are clinics you're setting up for the clinics for kids,
For
for
kids,
youth.
yes, yeah, for kids. And we're trying to offer it at a cheaper price, right? Like, so we can kind of get more kids involved, right? So maybe money's not an issue. $1,000 to go, for a weekend could be is a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So being able to offer a clinic with George Daniel for $125,
Yeah, it's
right,
amazing.
for a day
Yep.
is a lot more doable to kind of get those kids involved and get that stuff going, and that's for sure. Josh's idea to kind of take the team that direction, which I think
Love
is
that. Yeah, get more
which
people.
I think is a great way to do it. So he's done an amazing job, and we've had a whole lot of instructors who have come out. So, especially in our like Pennsylvania clinics and doing things like that, we've had a ton of people who've come out and volunteered, right? So, in the past, clinics have been, 6 to 8 kids, and then now we're having to like cut them off at 30 kids. I think a lot of it has to do with the venues and not being $1,000 to attend the clinic.
Yeah. And you were at the back to the last term of the Czech,
Yeah.
right? You were in the Czech Republic when they
Yes,
won.
sir. Yeah.
What was, maybe let's take it out of here again. I love my sports analogies. The plays of the week. I go back to the the ESPN kind of plays of the week, thinking of LeBron James with the 360 windmill dunk. But on that event, I mean, is there a play kind of or something during that week that really you think like, man, that was a play of the week? Play
100%, 100%. Like, so the Vltava River was one of the rivers that we fished in, like the upper Vltava. Yeah, so we were giving those fish, or the kids were giving those fish a lot more slack. So the nymph would, fall through the water column a little bit differently. If the fish eats it, it's going to hold on to it a little bit longer sometimes. And so sometimes they just want the nymphs presented that way. So fishing with a little bit of slack on the Vltava River was for sure the play of the week, or the way that was the secret to it, if that makes sense.
And that was the made the difference that day, just doing something small like that. Well, it's not small, but changing it up. And because you don't think of slack as like, well, even with tight line nymphing, right? It's in the name. You don't think of slack being something you do, but actually it was something that, and where does that come up? Some of these things you're out there fishing, that's the struggle, is that you do the things you've always done, right? And then how do you, did that come just from somebody's like, hey, I'm going to try using slack, or was that straight from Josh?
Yeah. I don't really know who figured it out, Dave, but I don't remember if it was Josh. I don't remember or what kid figured it out, but yeah, somebody figured it out. And once we figured it out, like, it was like, all right, there we are. Yeah. And so it's just kind of, it's not a whole lot of slack either, right? Like, it's just enough.
Right. Yeah. It's not like you got a huge belly in the line.
So it's just those little nuances, right, that make a difference. And so, I was super proud of the kids and or Josh or whoever figured that out. And, like I said, when we talked to the other competitors afterwards, because they asked us what we were doing, and, we just kind of told them, like, no, we were giving them slack.
Yeah, you did.
And so just great learning experiences like that. And there's a ton of other things, right, like that too, Dave, that like there are little nuances where you can change your drift, or you can do these little bitty things that make a huge difference, and it may not be from, go from catching, 50 fish to 0 fish, but it's definitely from catching 50 fish versus catching 35 fish, and so those little things make a big difference.
And it all adds up. I think I was listening to Josh's podcast, which is coming out soon, and he was talking in that one about how kind of a similar thing, right? It's not, he was talking about getting that first win. You come to a new place or something, and he's like, don't stress on it. Just go in there and use your confidence. Just get your first win. Get a fish. Doesn't matter what it is, And, it makes a lot of sense, because it kind of breaks the worst thing is, and I know this well because I'm a steelhead fisherman, you know what I mean? Like, getting skunked, right, is on your mind. And then you start talking to yourself like, oh, man, am I going to ever see a fish? Are there fish even out there? You know what I mean? And you're in this world of like, there's a lot of that mental thing, energy. Like, do you find that's true? Do you believe in all that stuff like that can affect?
Yeah. It's one of those things. We talk about that all the time. Like, if I go to a new river, the first thing I'm going to do is go to the fishiest looking place I can find and catch one. You know what I mean? Like, and that came from Josh, 100%. Yeah. And so, I think, the mental aspect of everything, which is why I said, like, being a cheerleader, right? Like, is part of it. And even up top, right? Like, when Josh and I are talking through stuff, trying to figure stuff out, or Josh is like, should we do this? You know what I mean? I'll just try to help, you know, navigate those situations.
Do you guys have I always think of course, fly fishing, you would never see this, but like the board, right? You got the whiteboard out there and you're diagramming some stuff. Is that coming out on these events?
I mean, almost, you know what I mean? Like, I mean,
yeah.
You know, pretty much every day after we get done, we sit down and we talk, and it's like, okay, what were we doing here? What were we doing here? You know, everybody puts in fly that was their most productive for that day, or what, you know what I mean? We're always trying to, like, you know, Paul Bork had the mentality of, it was like, they call it team medal mentality, right? So we're trying to do whatever we can for the team to medal, like whether that means individually or not. So like, you know, it is, I think that's one reason why the youth team works so great, is because all those kids, you know, are fishing together as a team, right? Like it's not about one person. It's not about, you know, they're just trying to win a team medal. So that's what we're going for.
Well, this is exciting. I think, Jess, we can probably leave it there. We'll send everybody out to the mayflyproject.com or usangling.org.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, this is exciting. I think it's going to be fun to watch this, especially this year, how it's in our home rivers, home country, and see how this works out. But yeah, man, appreciate all your time today, and we'll look forward to watching the event here in the
Yes,
summer.
sir. Appreciate you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
If you get a chance and you're interested in hearing more about this, heading out, if you're going to be in the eastern Idaho area, check in with Jess and the crew out there. You can go to usangling.org, get more information there, or check in with Jess online. Let them know you heard this podcast. And if you want to volunteer, they're always looking for volunteers, so great opportunity to see some of the best out there, not only the youth, but the women's this year. Find out more and dig into it. I want to give you a heads up. Next week, we are launching into the Project Healing Waters event we mentioned. Project Healing Waters down the White River. Chad Johnson, we're going to be giving away a trip. And so if you're interested in finding out more, stay tuned next week when we're going to have a podcast that talks about everything we have going, and we'll follow up with you in more detail. Thanks for checking out Travel Today. I hope you live that dream trip this year and you get a chance to experience that road less traveled.